that's of value to us? I think it's an extremely good question to ask, and I think the way Brian and his committee have gone about looking at it, I think will be very, very helpful. Time in school, you know how heavy and thick the curriculum is now, and we better be using it properly, I think. This will really help us with it. So first of all, thank you very much for allowing me to come today. For all of you aspiring principals, isn't that what AP stands for? I think this will be helpful for you in trying to understand where you're at in your career and where you want to go. The district has been, and I'm going to say neglectful, in not articulating this clearly enough. And many of you may think that the rule seems to change once in a while on how this all works. How do I get from one position to the next? So we feel it's really important that we articulate clearly to all people who are aspiring for careers in administration within the district to understand how you move from area to area. What positions allow you to apply for what positions? So we've tried to put down what we thought was something of value to you. Our principals have had a look at this and given us some input. I'm going to the AP Council and the VP Council to also get some input. And I want to get your thoughts about what you think. What are things that we've missed here? What are things that we've totally missed the mark on? And what are the things that are really helpful? If you note here, we've kind of gone through all of the positions that are available, right from teacher, coordinating teacher, assistant principal, consultants, vice principals, supervisors, directors, right up to superintendents for the most part, with reference to a career ladder that you may be interested in. I'm sure all of you aren't looking to be an assistant principal for the rest of your life. It is a ladder rung. Assistant principal is not a career destination. It's a stopover on the journey. And this document that I've given you is the journey. If you want to look at it in a little bit more visual manner, if you look at the very last page, it tells you and shows you a little bit about how it looks starting at the teacher and as you move up the career ladder. I've also included in here the salary allowances that go with those positions, because that's also very interesting. Those allowances, by the way, are negotiated through your collective agreements. This is not something that I just made up to make it look good. This is something that's negotiated on a regular basis and receives increases as per your normal salary. So individuals in these positions receive their normal salary plus the allowance that you see under each of these career ladder positions. So what I want to do, first of all, is I want to allow you some time at your table to sit and talk about this a little bit. Look at some of the different positions, see if there's anything that seems a little out of whack. If there's something that you don't quite understand, I want you to write it down on the back of the document, and after I give you about 5 minutes or 10 minutes to look at this and discuss it, I'm going to ask you if you have any questions that you'd like of me to somehow give you some clear indication as to what we're trying to accomplish here. Then at the end, I'm going to ask you again to write down any suggestions you may have, and then give the documents back to me so that I can go back and sit down with administration, senior administration, and discuss some of the things that we may want to change with this before we actually publish it. So, before we start, any questions? All right. So, I'll give you 5 to 10. Away you go. The application documents that sit on the intranet site. So this is kind of a visual document of how you can kind of move. It didn't talk about the prerequisites or the training or anything. Right. And I think that would be found on the application process.
We just thought as a snapshot.
If we wanted to make a snapshot, that might be a good idea.
That would be
okay, thank you. Yes, anybody else? Come on, you guys, you didn't bring me all the way here for one question. Yes?
For example, if you're looking for a really unique opportunity, a principal always in elementary would like to move to a high school environment, can they go principal to VP high school?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I think it says that on there.
Can they later return to principalship also?
Absolutely. We've had that happen many times where principals in elementary or junior high school feel that they need to taste that experience at high school first as a vice principal. And then depending on how long they're there, you'll note that it says in here, if you're away from the principalship for any more than 5 years, you have to reapply. So, and we believe that's important because absence from the principalship really does speak to things that have happened while you've been away from it that you may not be aware of and maybe need to reapply or retrain. So you can't kind of go away for 10 years and you know, go to Europe and do whatever, and then come back and say, well, I was a principal when I left 10 years ago. Well, the world has changed, like significantly. So there is a time limit on that absenteeism. I want to make mention of a couple of other things that are important. You'll note that we've moved to term. We call term positions, and many people maybe were unclear about that concept of term, but in the Instructional Services Department, we believe in term now because we think that those are not career positions. Those are positions that you go in, you occupy, you learn, you give, and then you go back to a school and you take all that expertise. And you also allow opportunity for more people to go through that excellent professional development experience. It's interesting, you know, of these positions, I've been every one of them. Every one of them. And every one of them I found valuable. Every one of them. But it's interesting, I was lucky enough to move through them in small increments. There were people that were in one particular position I'm thinking of, 15 years. And that allowed for nobody else to get into those positions because they were one-only positions. So for that person in there who really liked that job, they were not too happy. But for those on the outside wanting that job, they weren't too happy either. So now with the term, which is sometimes difficult for people to appreciate, it makes it better, I think, for the district as a whole to have these opportunities, and it spreads the wealth, it spreads the knowledge out into the schools where people really need it. Yes?
I recall last year that you said that the supervisor position was also a term position.
Was what?
The supervisor position was also a term
It
position.
is. Does it say on there?
No.
It is a term position. Thank you for that input. We'll make sure that that's changed. It is a term position.
Well, thank you. Like here, this is all I find out at this meeting. Yeah.
This is Brian's last year. Yes?
Has there been any discussion about the future of the assistant principal position?
A little bit. A little bit. And I hear little bits and pieces of this all around about the AP position. Whether it's a valuable position. When we don't have enough APs, by the way, I'm concerned this year about having enough APs, then we appoint CTs. Maybe we should just have all CTs. You know, we have had some discussion, but at the present time, there will not be any changes. For those of you that have come out of teaching positions into assistant principal positions, I think you'll find that it is a real challenge. AP is a hard job. You're teaching almost full-time, and you're trying to learn to be an administrator. You're working all these admin extra hours. You're doing all this stuff. I remember this very, very well. But it is a good training position. You know, I think some of you, you know, you're in different circumstances where maybe you don't have to teach quite as much. That would be the ideal. If we could get our VPs down in teaching, we get our APs down in teaching so that they could experience more of the administration. But sometimes our ratios don't allow us. But we are one of the few districts that have 3 levels of administration in a school, and we certainly see it as a good training ground at the present time.